Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Half Man Half Tech. I'm your host Ben, and I've been using macOS Big Sur 11.0.1 release candidate not 1 but number 2 for some time now, and I gotta say right off the bat that it's very good, yet has a lot to tell. Seems to be hiding some stuff, so make sure you watch till the end as I reveal everything. And also I might probably need a sub, as over 94% of the people that watch this channel unsubscribe. With that, let's get into the video. On my 2016 15-inch MacBook Pro, it came in at around 3.22 gigs, which is quite small. And if we go to see the storage that's being taken up by this release candidate number 2, it just takes a moment to load the storage here. And as you can see here, it's taken up 16.1 gig, which is very good. The previous version, which is release candidate number 1, was taking up 22.53 gigs, which was quite a lot. So you can see that release candidate number 2 is way smaller, which is a good thing. And then if we go back a little bit just to see the software version that we have here, or the build number, you can see that we have a final build number here. It's 20B28. The previous version, which was release candidate number 1, had 20B5022A, and as you can see here, this release candidate number 2 is a final build. There's not going to be a release candidate number 3. This is the final thing. Also, something worth mentioning is that when I went into my system preferences to update to this release candidate, and then when I clicked on the update or check for update now, I should say that this release candidate 2 had already downloaded in the background. It literally took about 30 seconds to complete the download, and then the preparation for this release candidate number 2 took less than 5 minutes. This is good, and Apple did say that macOS Big Sur is going to take a shorter time to prepare and install compared to previous version of macOS like Catalina and so on. So that goal has been achieved with this final build of macOS Big Sur 11.0.1. Now, let's talk about the new features, changes, and bug fixes that I've managed to notice in the time that I've been using this release candidate number 2. The first thing that you should be aware of is that this macOS Big Sur 11.0.1 release candidate number 2 has a full installation. If you run the command to check for the update, you will see it, and this means that you can save it as a DMG file for your other devices and use it according to your need. Also, something else that people are getting in touch with me with regards to this update is that after updating to release candidate number 2, when you go into your system preferences and then check for the update, the section that usually shows you that you are on the beta is no longer showing. So this is affecting different MacBooks, but for me, as you can see here, I can still see this section. But if you don't see it, just know that you are not alone. Next thing has to do with AirPods handover. It's finally working with this release candidate number 2, which is a final build. And shout out to Brandon Williams over on Twitter for getting in touch and letting me know that his AirPods are finally working when it comes to handover with this update. Let me know if yours are also working with this release candidate number 2. Now, I should actually have covered this as the first change that came with this update. The moment you finish updating your device and your Mac reboots, you will notice that you get a new analytics tab. And for you to be able to proceed, you need to either accept the analytics or just don't accept anything, and then click continue, and then your Mac will reboot up in a normal process. And then after that, you will see that you have no update and that your Mac is up to date. In Safari, the recently browsed section has actually been expanded. So if you have different devices that are signed into the same iCloud ID, you'll be able to see more of your history here in Safari as long as the devices are connected and they are in sync with the iCloud ID that is on the macOS Big Sur. An unfortunate change that came with this update is that the battery health maximum percentage is no longer being displayed. So if you go to the About This Mac section and then you go to the power option, you actually won't be able to see your maximum health percentage. And I tried also to go to the battery section just to see if I'll find it, but the maximum health percentage has been removed with this macOS Big Sur release candidate. The last change that came with this macOS Big Sur 11.0.1 RC2 is that the system ships with built-in dynamic linker cache of all system provided libraries. So those are the new features and changes that I noticed with this update. update. Now let's talk of the bugs still existing with this 11.0.1 RC2. The first bug has to do with whether you are updating from beta 2 or beta 3. You might be given a super large file, so keep this in mind. And then if you use parallel desktop, from time to time you might experience kernel panics, and you might be unable to connect to certain braille displays using Bluetooth. Those are the bugs. Now let's talk of battery performance when it comes to this update. Now for me, I did show you that my maximum health percentage has been removed, but you can see the number of cycle counts that I have. And I gotta say that if we go to the system preferences just to see how much battery usage I have, and then go to the battery section, you can see that in the last 10 days this is the screen on time that I've had. I should let you know that most of this screen on time that you see is from release candidate number 1, and I should expect release candidate number 2 to be no different, because release candidate number 1 was good when it comes to battery performance. When it comes to device or Mac performance, I should say that this update feels smoother than release candidate number 1, and I did run Geekbench scores just to see if performance is above or below, and the results are going to be interesting. So I ran both CPU and GPU performance, and when I perform these Geekbench scores, there's basically nothing running in the background besides Finder, which you can't really close, and then besides the screen recording, which is a system utility built in, and then the Geekbench score that I use to do the Geekbench scores itself. So I do the same for all updates, and this one is no different. So for single core on release candidate number 2, I had a score of 736, but before that on release candidate number 1, I had the score of 741, and before that on beta 10, I had a score of 875. You see a trend? It's going like this. That's not all when it comes to single core. We'll come back to it. So let's look at multi-core performance. On release candidate number 2, for multi-core, I had a score of 3029, and then previously when I was on release candidate number 1, I had a score of 3078, and then before that when I was on beta 10, I had a score of 3502. You see the trend? Yeah. And then also I did GPU performance just to see how this release candidate performs. So on release candidate number 2 for GPU, I got a score of 17,687, and then before that on release candidate number 1, I had a score of 17,973, and then before that on beta 10, I had a score of 17,613. So GPU, it's okay. However, this is the thing. When it comes to performance, you can see that, you know, single core and then multi-core, both this final build of macOS Big Sur. This is the same version that you are probably going to get if you are updating to macOS Big Sur when it officially comes out on Thursday, the 12th of November. So as you can see, performance, both single core, it's lower, and then multi-core performance or multi-threaded task, it's also lower than expected. So I don't know why this is so. I wish I knew. I mean, perhaps it's sort of making older Intel Mac devices look slower so that the Apple M1 chip or Apple Silicon Macs seem to be faster. I don't know. Also, they removed the way you can check your battery maximum health capacity percentage. So I don't know also how we are going to be monitoring that. Hopefully this comes with an update, and if people complain enough, we might get that feature back. So I hope that Apple really works on these Geekbench scores. As you can see, there's a downward trend, and I'm not happy with this downward trend. Apple One More Thing Silicon event just completed, and we now know the Apple Silicon chip that is going to be in the Macs, and that is the Apple M1 chip. M for Mac, since it's the chip that is going to be in the Apple Silicon Macs, and then 1 is like the first generation of this Apple, you know, chip that is here. So next year there will be Apple M2 in the next Apple Silicon devices. Other than that, that's about it for me, guys. We know the devices that we got. We got a new MacBook Air with Apple Silicon. We also got a new Mac Mini with Apple Silicon, and we also got a new 13-inch MacBook Pro with Apple Silicon. So that's that's about it for me, guys. If you like this video, drop a like and hit subscribe. I'll be covering the Apple Silicon event very shortly after this, and other than that, stay safe and I will definitely see you in the next video very soon. Peace.